the words of the meditation are from Mary Oliver. It's called Praying. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention, then patch a few words together. And don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak. For our readings today, I have some Hafiz poems, versions by Ladinsky. These are renderings of several very short Hafiz poems. It is a great injustice and a monumental act of cruelty for any religion to make someone fear God. And another one is called The Anointment. It's only one line. Dear ones, let's anoint this earth with dance. This Ladinsky version of Hafiz is called Or Toss the Rascals Out. Who would want to live with some crickets in your room carousing loudly all night? That is to say, either befriend all your thoughts, party with them the best you can, or toss the rascals out. And this next poem is mine. I don't know how to pray, and only sometimes want to. The idea of God seems ruined by religion, by the humorless, the morally certain. I pray to the laughing mystery which set it all in motion, to the warm power of good arising in the calm heart, the focused mind. I pray to the supple green of summer and to the depths of the blue illusion. I pray for a high tide of compassion to flood up and float our leaders. Just a speck on a marble in infinite space, a split-second song in the ears of time, endless time. I know nothing about God. So, first of all, I want to say that what follows are simply my thoughts. I hope no one will be offended. I, like most of us, is just searching around in the mist and trying to get closer to the great holy whatever. I'm a reverent agnostic. I'm in love with the sacredness I feel all around us here on the earth, and I can't name it exactly. I have no certainty. The God word makes me cringe when it's limited to or connected in any way to dogma. So I suppose it's not God I resist, but dogma. And the followers who don't question conventional religions and don't think for themselves. I'm not funny. I totally lack timing. But I come across as a serious person. But I really love to laugh. And quite a few of my rather slapped down and minimally revised poems are quirky to the point of humor. Many of us remember Chet and Vera Kalm, longtime members here. They're gone now, but I'll love them forever. They're the best of the greatest generation. But Vera once said to me earnestly that she thought maybe it was a little flip and irreverent of me to write prayer poems to the great holy whatever. Briefly, I felt guilty for making laughing holy poems. Then I was given, and I thought in that time that maybe I was an irreverent agnostic. But then I was given the gift, which is Daniel Ladinsky's book of versions of the holy poems of the Persian mystic Hafiz. I had previously read some more direct translations of Hafiz by rather sober 19th century poets, none of whom found much humor in Hafiz. But Ladinsky wrote such goofy versions as the following. God and I have become like two giant fat people living in a tiny boat. We keep bumping into each other and laughing. And another it's called the Great Religions. The great religions are the ships, poets the lifeboats. Every sane person I know has jumped overboard. That's good for business, isn't it, Hafiz? Years ago, our founding minister, Kathy Duhan, gave a sermon centered around a book called God Laughs and Plays. I loved the idea of a laughing God. I wanted to know that God, the laughing God. So David James Duncan wrote that book, and one of his chapters is entitled Unsaying the Word God. In it, he says, God is unlimited. Thought and language are limited. God is a fathomless but beautiful mystery. The instant we define this fathomless mystery, it is no longer fathomless. To define is to limit. The greater a person's confidence in their definition of God, the more sure I feel the worship of Him has become the worship of their own definition. Laughter is a grace, and at its best is spontaneous and unexpected. Let's be like the heretical mystics, think for ourselves, and gravitate toward wonder and spontaneous gratitude. Let's avoid literalists, demagogues, and manufactured rote think. I love the ancient mystic poets, but some years ago I sold all my books of translations of these poets, probably to Yellow House Books, because they misinterpreted all the God talk in the mystic poetry. It was my own failing. I had a, leftover from my own childhood conceptions and religious training, I had a much more limited vision, understanding of God. And then I realized that these supposed heretics had a really expansive view, and that I could read them and expand with them. I've since bought many of those books again. I want to get back to Daniel Ladinsky. His book called The Gift has been important to me. It comprises translations, and as I said, he calls them versions or renderings of the poems of Hafiz, the great Sufi master and mystic. And he lived between 1320 and 1389 in Persia. The Sufi religion itself was heretical to the Muslim clerics and caliphs. Many Sufi schools were outlawed, and often the participants were ostracized or even executed. Because they were so mistreated, the Sufi poets spoke often in code, so that the poems the taverns in the poems were the Sufi schools, and they talked of more earthly ecstasies, drunkenness, and physical love as symbols of something more spiritual, so that an earthly lover became the great holy beloved. And the Sufi students in the poems are often seen as clowns or ragamuffins or scoundrels or wandering drunks. So it's not hard to see how such codes held in poems would allow for humorous translations. However, and this upset me greatly, was I realized that Ladinsky's translations, versions, are deeply offensive to Muslims, that they think they're blasphemous, they think they're opportunistic, and they think that it's an affront to Iranian culture. And that, I almost threw this whole idea for a sermon away when I found that out, but then I know there's something wrong with it, and yet I can't help that it makes me laugh. And Ladinsky also has these anachronisms in the poems where he's talking about things that you know aren't from Hafiz's age, but they're much more modern things. but still they make me laugh. I should be ashamed. There's a few of the poems that are too earthy for me that I don't like, bawdy even for my taste, but most of them I do. On first reading Ladinsky, I assumed that he was some old California stoner from the late 20th century. Apparently he had been a stoner at one point. I think he went to the University of Arizona where he, indulged, but then I think he had some important experiences in the desert that kind of changed his orientation to the world. And after that, he sought out Meher Baba's, centers. And he spent a lot of time in India, and then he spent time living very close to the center in South Carolina, and he had a strong connection with some of Meher Baba's direct, I don't want to call them disciples exactly, but top students. And he missed Meher Baba because he died in 1969, and this was in 70s when Ladinsky was involved. But I don't know a lot about Meher Baba, but I know that he's the one who originally said, "Don't worry, be happy," before Bobby McFerrin made it a hit song. And that's exactly how Ladinsky's Hafiz translations make me feel. Like happiness is a clear choice, that there are ladders up out of the darker moods into the light. I feel some of the poems addressing me directly, like this one called Scratching My Back. In a lot of Asian poetry, the full moon represents enlightenment, and I don't know if this is what he means, but there's a lot of full moons floating about in his poems. So this is one called Scratching My Back. You can think of Hafiz as a divine old dog who just keeps scratching his back on the moon. Oh, I don't care about your thoughts or what you've ever done. Just open up this book whenever you're sad. For I love the way you smile. And in another one, this is the whole poem. It says, "Who laughs the most knows the most, if that laughter is sincere." The wisdom of the poems is not earth-shattering or different. It's similar to what spiritual teachers through centuries have taught. But what appeals to me is the humor that somehow lowers my guard. I guess many of us put up walls when we feel too preached at or condescended to, but somehow the humor throws down all the walls for me. And in laughter, laughter opens my heart the way love does. And in Laughing Holy poems, laughter and love arrive in one package, leaving me happily defenseless. I'm just there. Here are a few more Ladinsky Hafiz poems. 1,000 times I have ascertained and found it true. The affairs of the world are really nothing into nothing. Still, though, we should dance. And another one. It's called Dropping Keys. The small man builds cages for everyone he knows, while the sage who has to duck his head when the moon is low keeps dropping keys all night long for the beautiful, rowdy prisoners. And this one's mine. If God is metaphor, then I'm a believer. If we free God from the cramped cages of mind and see God as the infinite swirl of mystery within and beyond all that is, then I'm on my knees, praying, singing, laughing out loud. Even our usually sober-minded Mary Oliver got into the spirit of poetic laughter and dance. She wrote in a prayer poem called simply Prayer, "May I never not be frisky. May I never not be risque. May my ashes, when you have them, friend, and give them to the ocean, leap in the froth of the waves, still loving movement, still ready, beyond all else, to dance for the world." And even our beloved and quite serious W.E.B. Du Bois wrote, "I am especially glad of the divine gift of laughter. It has made the world human and lovable despite all its pain and wrong." In spite of my hesitations, I thank the blasphemous Ladinsky for his sense of humor and for bringing laughter into the arena of the spiritual circus. I thank him for teaching me that laughter and prayer can share the same tiny boat. In my efforts to not worry but be happy, I years ago encountered invisible Grace, who might be my imaginary friend like a child would have, or perhaps she's my higher self I'm attempting to rise into. In this year in which I've had a close encounter with my mortality, she has helped me to balance radical acceptance with radical hope. And this hope for the possibilities with an uncertainty. Grace says that holes open everywhere. If we stick our heads through, we can hear the universe laughing. I'll close with a poem I wrote a few weeks ago. It's called Grace's High Wire. From the base of the long ladder, I look up to the platform far above and slowly climb a rung at a time, approaching Grace's high wire. I leave worry in the sawdust below, pick up my long balance pole, and step out onto the taut wire strung between acceptance and hope. There's no audience below, just tiers of empty seats. But I'm not alone, you know. Grace is with me. She is my balance pole. It's her wire, her courage, her laughter.